Northeast Nevada Regional Development Authority. Aside from this role, Sheldon also is a small business owner, managing a small media consulting firm, and also as Bittersweet Auction, the only live auction company in Northeast Nevada. Sheldon holds a bachelor's degree in business administration along with a master's in history. That is what Sheldon provided to me. But unfortunately, I want to expand this a little bit because Sheldon formerly served as the Nevada mining industry expert. And during this time, Sheldon spent a lot of time going to Canada and working with companies. Since he's been with NNRDA, he's continued that role. He also was a staff sergeant in the Air Force. So please help me welcome Sheldon Mudd to introduce his panelists as we talk about ways that we can help encourage entrepreneurship in rural Nevada.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. Hopefully, everybody is well satiated and full, but unfortunately for me, that means that I have to try to keep everyone awake. So we're going to see what we can do here. We've got a great panel for you this afternoon, a great bunch of local entrepreneurs who have sat on both sides of the aisle in public and private industry. And so they have a very well-rounded viewpoint in regards to business and small business in the state of Nevada. So I'm going to introduce our panel in no particular order. From what I can tell, I think we've got everybody on the call. Once I introduce you, if you'll just give a quick shout out and say hello so we make sure we do in fact have everybody. So first and foremost, I want to introduce everyone today to Mr. Muceus. Hopefully I said that right. I haven't heard your last name very often, Ian. But he is the founder and CEO of Battleborn Supply, which is a healthcare and defense solutions manufacturer. Ian was born and raised in Paradise Valley, Nevada. And I think that's where he's at right now. So if he has some internet problems, that's probably what's going on. But he spent the last 10 years in Washington, D.C. and in the San Francisco Bay Area, most recently acting as the Director of Defense Programs for Origin, which is a 3D printing additive manufacturing company building an open material ecosystem. Ian holds a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, along with graduate level work in hypersonics, computer science, and business at Cal Poly and George Mason University. So good afternoon, Ian.
Thank you for that introduction, and glad to be here. Yeah, the last name is Muceus, but you know, you're a ballpark. If you get ballpark on my last name, I give you a pass.
All right. Well, I apologize for being off a little bit. So Muceus, gotcha. Thank you, sir. Next up, we're going to welcome Commissioner Richard McKay. Mr. McKay is a Eureka County native and the owner of several small businesses, including the Sundown Lodge, the Eureka Saloon, and the Snowball Ranch, where he raises grass-fed organic beef. Prior to his return to Eureka, though, Rich worked for over 20 years in marketing and sales leadership positions for several Fortune 500 technology companies in Silicon Valley. Commissioner McKay holds a bachelor's degree in marketing from Boise State University, and he has an MBA from Golden Gate University. So, Commissioner, we appreciate having you on the call this afternoon.
Hi, Sheldon. Thanks for the intro. Now looking forward to the discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Next up, we're going to welcome Mr. Brian Blair. Mr. Blair has founded a number of businesses, included Arrigo, which provided irrigation, automation, and water efficiency services to agriculture, as well as Styx Imaging, which is an aerial mapping service that specializes in mapping for survey, engineering, and mining firms. Further, Brian is also the CEO of LoneRock Aerospace. Although Brian is not a Nevada native, he hails from the state of Pennsylvania. He was first stationed in Nevada at Fallon in 2006. He spent 20 years as a naval aviator, including 4 overseas deployments, and graduated from the Naval Fighter Weapons School, which most of you know as Top Gun. Mr. Blair holds a bachelor's degree in aerospace engineering and an MBA from UNR. So Brian, welcome this afternoon. We appreciate you having you on the panel.
Thanks for the introduction, Sheldon. Looking forward to the discussion.
Great to have you. And last but not least, we introduced her a little bit earlier, but Mrs. Donna Bath. Mrs. Bath, as mentioned before, is currently the Government and Public Affairs Director for Silver Lion Farms in Ely. She is also the chairwoman of my board, so I treat her as nice as I can and try to give an awesome introduction. She was raised right here in Nevada, in Ely, Nevada. She has worn several hats as a resident there, including being the county clerk of White Pine County. She was a staff member for Congressman Dean Heller. Her and her husband have a couple small businesses there in White Pine County, where they've been providing decades of support and service to the community. She holds active roles, as you can see, in both the public and private sector. And as a result, Mrs. Bath is a tremendous resource for the new, or for any new and well-established entrepreneur. So Mrs. Bath, Donna, we sure appreciate having you once again.
Thank you, Sheldon. Appreciate the opportunity to participate.
All right, great. So panel members, we're going to get started, and we have several items that we could cover, but I anticipate that in the course of this discussion, we might hit a few rabbit trails, and that's okay. We'll chase some of those rabbit trails if they seem appropriate. So the first off, what we're going to ask is, you as in your role as business members, as business owners, as entrepreneurs in Nevada, what sources do you use to gain information about being a startup, to get help, to get resources? What are some of the primary things that you look for when you need a resource or when you need help, whether it be something like the SBA, the SBDC, University Library, the RDA, chambers, cooperative extensions, all of those kind of things? What do you find as some of the most reliable and useful tools? And I'll just open it up. Whoever wants to jump in.
I might as well kick us off, I suppose. Yeah, so I mean, it's sort of dependent sometimes on the industry you're in. I find it very helpful if you do anything related to defense work. The SBIR infrastructure, the small business innovation infrastructure, small business innovation research infrastructure is really robust, and that's across the DoD, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and many other agencies, including things like housing and urban development. So you can really look at these small business innovation research grants across a really wide swath of industries. And if your industry happens to fit into one of the, they call them topics that are out there, you can really get some funding as an early stage entrepreneur to not only be kind of hooked into whatever agency that is granting your funding, but also kind of an ecosystem that forms around that. So for instance, we at Battleborn Supply Co, we're the recipient of a SBIR that kind of kicked off a bunch of different things. You start Slack groups with these other founders that also get awards, and you're plugged in now to an agency that's really looking for new technology, and they're looking to help you. They want their money to be spent wisely, and they don't want to throw their money away on ventures and efforts that aren't going to pan out. So to the extent that they can make their money valuable and more valuable and make it pay off and have you be an ongoing business, they're going to help do that. So I'd really have folks look at really industry specific, but look at the SBIRs. There's what they call open topics. You can go into an open topic and actually get funding for pretty much anything, as long as it has a defense related, in this case, aspect to it. So.
Great. Well, thank you, Ian. Any other thoughts?
Sure, I'll chime in a little bit here, Sheldon. So trying to finance your business, a small business in rural Nevada, the traditional banking route's probably not a good route to go. that stymied me considerably when I was trying to buy my businesses. So how I kind of learned about whether I wanted to buy them or not, I spoke to who would be my business peers. So I had conversations with someone that was already in the business to kind of gain a little bit of knowledge, and also potential customers. So for me, having a motel, talking to the different mining interests and saying, hey, you know, if we had this motel and offered X, Y, Z amenity to you guys, would you stay with us? So I think talking with business peers and also talking with potential customers of your product or business.
Sheldon, I'd like to add that one of the considerations when you're a business, whether you're small or large, coming into Nevada, especially Nevada as a whole, look at where your property owners are, meaning, is this private property? Is it government property? We are hugely owned by governmental entities, meaning Forest Service, BLM. Anytime you've got to have a right of way or access to governmental property, no matter how smart it is, it's going to hang you up if you don't start with that knowledge in the first place. So be aware of where your property is and who your surrounding properties owners are, and any right-of-ways or easements or utilities or any of that that's going to go across your business that you may want to put in.
Donna, that's great great information there. I just dealt with an easement that I wasn't aware of, so that's that's a very good point to founders. Absolutely.
So Brian, did you find yourself needing any resources? I mean, you kind of came from outside of the state initially. Was there anybody that was specifically useful in your ventures?
Absolutely. Thanks, Sheldon. So when I first got here, my community knowledge was pretty low in Nevada. So I made sure I reached out to the University of Reno, University of Nevada, Reno, and took classes there. And that really, the networking there and the facilities and the information they could provide were critical to everything I've done since then. So I would say those that are coming in from out of state or out of the local area, get with those resources, whether they're university-based, government-based, chambers of commerce. They can not only tell you where your customers may be if you're looking at local businesses, but also provide you other resources, other entries that can get you to where you want the business to be. So I don't say enough of how much the university has helped me and other centers, and don't use them. They're excited to work with entrepreneurs, and the local community and the local colleges want you to be successful, and they will do everything possible to get you there.
Great. Yeah, that's great insights. Thank you, Brian. So just for everybody's reference, in the chat log there, Maggie is listing a few hyperlinks to some of the resources that are being mentioned during this conversation. So keep your eyes open. If you have any, maybe if you have a specific question you want to throw in there, or if you know some resources that get mentioned here and know some specific links to those, please, by all means, throw them in there. So, okay, wonderful. Well, we'll move on and we'll tackle the next question, kind of get going. So, organizations like Startup NV, who have really done the heavy lifting in this in this event, they have some well-established networks and partnerships in some of the urban areas of the state. And we could probably say that there is an entrepreneurial culture in those urban areas. And so the next question might be, what can these entrepreneur support organizations in the urban areas, such as Las Vegas or Reno, what can they do perhaps to help out rural entrepreneurs? Is having access to their mentors going to be beneficial to some of the entrepreneurs that we have out in rural Nevada? So, I mean, basically the question is what can these established groups do? What do you think that they can do to help folks out here where we may not have this established entrepreneurial environment here really developed yet?
You know, Sheldon, I will add RNDC in Nevada. Mary Kerner's group is based here in Ely. but they reach out across the state, and they are really, really good and a wonderful resource for anyone wanting to start up a business. They do loans, they help you do a business plan. They're great. They work hand in hand with SBA, and Mary will connect you with any of those. But reaching out to these groups, if you feel like you need a larger hand, I know that communication, I think, is key. And don't be afraid to reach out to these people. As everyone is saying, everyone wants you to succeed. So use your resources.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Donna, you guys kept RNDC a secret in Ely for such a long time that I think now they're starting to get some exposure across the state. So yeah, they will be a great resource. So thanks for that comment. But back to the question too is, and I don't know, maybe Brian, Ian, you guys are a little bit closer to the Reno area in some of your dealings. I don't know if you've had exposure to some of these entrepreneur groups, but whether you do or not, I mean, can you maybe you can kind of lead that conversation on what they can? Is there anything that they can do? Is there something we can reach out to them to utilize what? Essentially not have to reinvent the wheel, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I will say, having reached out to the entrepreneur, such as entrepreneur assemblies and other organizations in the Reno area, they're hugely helpful. They can take you from what starts a business to all the back end operations to how to reach out to customers and everything associated with it. One of the critical things they provide is mentorship. Now, as they're looking to expand maybe outside of the Reno area, one of the critical things they could possibly do is reach out to local chambers of commerce in some of these rural areas and start developing a mentor group in these rural communities. So if you're starting a business in Fallon or Eureka or Elko, that these groups already have the mentors on site and can point you in the right direction. So as they start branching out from the urban areas, it's going to be critical for them to get that local foothold so that the local entrepreneurs have a place to go and they can meet one-on-one with those people and really work through the problems. Because as I found, someone's already gone through whatever you're going through. And when you can sit down with them and kind of work through the problems, it just takes weeks off the work you have to do to get to the right solution right away. So that's the first thing. But that always goes back to the whole networking piece. And as these local entrepreneurial places start networking out, they can start helping those entrepreneurs then find the early adopters for whatever they're doing, whether it's a local business or something else. And that's just going to broaden what the startup business is trying to do. And really, once you start broadening that across the entire state, I think you're going to have a great ecosystem throughout Nevada.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I want to kind of tie that back to something that Donna said as well that I think is really important, which is a little bit of vulnerability. I think there's sometimes a complex with founders that you have to go about it all on your own. Maybe even talking about your idea you think is potentially dangerous because maybe you haven't wrapped IP around it or something like that yet. There are ways to get around that, NDAs, MNDAs. There's ways where you can open up a little bit more than you might otherwise do. Be a little bit vulnerable, reach out to those mentors. And I've always found it helpful to have mentors both intra-industry that work in the vertical that you're looking to work in, but also on a functional basis, right? If you're maybe not a financially minded person or don't have a financial academia background, pair up, make friends with folks who are in that industry, economists, CPAs, those types of folks. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to learn it all. Of course, having a little bit of general knowledge about all parts of running a business is important, but you're never going to be the very best at every single industry. So just kind of break your walls down a little bit. And then finally on the meetups and kind of spaces to associate with, I've found Meetup. There's an app, there's a website. You can find people who are specifically doing things that you're interested in, but you can also find groups that maybe you have no knowledge of, and you can get closer to those. Coming from the engineering side, if where you're at has a hacker space or a maker space, those are really important too. You don't have to be an engineer. You don't know how to use heavy equipment or these different machines that might be in these maker spaces, but you can learn and you can meet up with folks who can teach you. And I think it's really important to allow yourself to do that.
Great, Ian. Thank you very much. You hit on something that I think is paramount in this conversation. When you're sharing your ideas, you had mentioned, you want to keep your cards close, right? So somebody doesn't run away with your idea. And so for those out there, I mean, there's a lot of examples of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, to help protect your product. And from what I understand, you're pretty safe if you can just copy that. And once you get it signed, maybe a notary to date it and make it official, it certainly makes it more legal. But if you do have a lawyer, they're going to have those kind of things as well. But it's really not, I mean, when people say NDA, non-disclosure agreement, it sounds like it might be more than what it really is. But if you're certainly concerned about your intellectual property, that's an easy way to just add a layer of protection there. Because like we've talked in the past, I've talked with people on this call, is eventually you have to tell people what you have, right? I've got this box, it solves every problem you have, but eventually you have to say, how does it do that, in order to validate it. So I think that was absolutely a great point. And by getting with other entrepreneurs, they can, easily share those resources. But no, that's an obstacle that I find is always, at the forefront of the conversation. So anybody else on that topic? Or
just quickly, a really good space for that. So Y Combinator, folks don't know about that. It's a VC fund kind of, they're based in the Bay Area, but I think they have other places, but they do have resources online. So you can go and get pretty much all of their documentation that they give to their founders for free. So head over to Y Combinator, and I think it's under documents or something like that.
Okay.
Sheldon, to trail back to your original question on how do we think that the urban businesses could help the rurals, I have to tell you, rural Nevada is kind of its own little corner of the world, but I do have to also give a shout out to GoEd. They have hooked us up with resources and people that we can speak with and share their ideas and share their knowledge and some of the resources that maybe we don't have in rural Nevada. So they're a great conduit for us to be able to share resources. And I think they do a great job of that.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you. And as mentioned before, there's a lot of these links of the resources being populated in the chat box. So certainly take advantage of that. So we're going to move on to the next question, which I think we all know the answer to, but I'll kind of add to it a little bit. So the question simply, would more reliable or faster internet lead to the establishment of more companies in the rural areas? And I think we all would agree that that's absolutely yes. So I want you to maybe, if you would, expand, how would that help you, what you're doing in your business? I mean, today, if we were to bump it up to 150 meg, down in your location, what differences would that make? Would you immediately see more opportunity, more revenue, et cetera, and then go ahead and speculate or give some specifics on what that would mean for business growth, in your area.
So I guess I'll kick this one off, Sheldon. So the first business I was involved with Arrigo was a very data intensive business, looking at irrigation and trying to do a lot of with that. Expanding.
I think his internet, good point.
Yeah, Brian, if you can hear us, stand by. Also, we have somebody went ahead and started sharing their screen. Bruce Crater, looks like you're sharing your screen. So if you don't want us to see any emails, we might want to stop that share. Brian, if you can still hear us, we lost you. Yeah, this is perfect timing. Who would have thought? Now, Brian, you're in Fallon, if I remember right. I thought you guys were doing pretty well over there.
So can you hear me again? Am I back up?
You're back. You're good.
Okay, perfect. So we were pretty good in Fallon, but a lot of the work we did was not in Fallon itself. So when you're looking at providing services out in Winnemucca or some of the other areas, for the last one we were doing aerial mapping, we were producing, 100 gigabytes of data in a single day. We would actually ship that out via next day mail to get it to some place to process, by having the ability to push it over the internet, because it was quicker for us to mail this information out depending on some of the work we were doing. And so as you look at infrastructure and you want to start expanding where some of the business opportunities can be, you need to have that internet connection and a solid, stable internet connection to boot.
Sheldon,
That's interesting. Go ahead, Donna. Sorry.
all right, I'll just share a few things with you. One is our remoteness on Silver Lion Farm. As you know, we're 60 miles from Ely. We only have satellite availability, and we've had to connect 5 separate services at the mine or at the farm to be able to operate. One is for security, one is for the house, one is for the greenhouse, and we're going to have to bump that up again when we get our computer system for our greenhouse running. The other example in Ely as a whole, we have a lot of people that want to come here, including prison workers, but they're gamers. And so it's a really hard thing for us to keep and retain employees that would love to have our rural lifestyle, but they just can't let loose of the availability of high-speed internet. So I think it's crucial to be able to get it into the rural areas.
No, from my perspective, internet's absolutely critical to growth. We have fiber running through Eureka, but it is almost an act of Congress to get AT&T to open up that fiber to allow it to go to the different businesses. But I think if we had the capability, we have some thoughts in mind about a public-private partnership where the county would fund, certain elements of the infrastructure, and then maybe private companies would fund the other pieces. But it would allow, especially in this day and age, more Silicon Valley immigrants like myself to come to rural Nevada and to set up shop in rural Nevada. So echo what you guys are saying. It's absolutely critical.
Yeah, I don't need to pour much more on that, but I'd just say, yeah, you got to look at the competitive landscape, right? I mean, we have South Korea with nationwide 5G. Maybe Donna's farm doesn't compete directly with them, but say another business does, or say maybe we continue being more and more globalized, right? You may be competing more and more with folks outside of your nation. So SpaceX has Starlink coming out. You can sign up for the beta there, I believe. That's going to cover North America for the first portion of the beta. It's going to give you 100 down and 10 up, essentially. But even that, right? We're kind of playing a losing game even with 100 down, 10 up. I know it sounds crazy when you're out here in rural Nevada because I have 20 down, 1 up, which is pretty terrible because the Bay Area is more like 500 down, 25 up. So we got to kind of keep with the times, and fiber would be a great way. SpaceX Starlink ends up being better than there, or kind of offers an upgrade path. That could be a way, but you're always going to kind of be behind, but you at least got to keep up the momentum to kind of try to stay competitive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt there's a lot, we have a lot to work on if we're going to get there. You mentioned the SpaceX Starlink, as I think it was put forth in the chat. Have any of you ever been outside and seen the Starlink satellites going by? Yeah, boy, that's creepy when you're not ready for it.
Yeah, that's the great thing about these Nevada skies though at night. It's I took my my fiance out and she'd never seen a shooting star before, so that's one of the great things we offer. So now they're not shooting stars, they're Starlink satellites, but yeah.
Yeah, well, before I had ever even heard of it, I was out on a walk at night and I saw them up there and I thought, what in the heck is going on? I mean, to see these 60 lights trailing across the sky, I mean, that's pretty creepy when you're not ready for it. So anyway, so yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of work to do. I'm with Commissioner McKay, for these small communities, a private company just usually cannot pencil it out. This is going to require a partnership from the public sector as well, or some sort of cooperative with the locals who are willing to put forth, a hefty upfront fee in order to make it work. So absolutely, I think we can all agree that that's a necessity for the region. So moving on a little bit, and especially, I mean, I think everybody probably has their ideas here, but we're curious as to the red tape. Is there any red tape that government agencies can cut or adjust to make business formation easier? Or what type of incentives could they put forth that maybe would kind of stack the deck for a new company in order to be successful and still moving and still operating, within 5 years? There's this 5-year grace period, it seems like, where, I mean, you're going to make it or you're not, in that time frame. So what kind of things can we do, those of us who are involved in government and policy making? What are some ideas you might have here in Nevada that might give business, small business, and any business for that matter, a leg up here in Nevada compared to anywhere else?
I'll chime in real quick. So from personal experience, so talk to your Chamber of Commerce and talk to your county commissioners. I was amazed, and you'd be amazed at what connections they may have at higher levels that can help you cut through red tape. And they're obviously wanting your business to succeed in whatever county you're in, so they can really kind of help pave things for you and be your advocate.
Maybe I'll point the finger at Donna here. I mean, you're going through the process right now, right? So maybe you might describe that just a little bit.
Well, as Guion told you earlier in the meeting, we're going right now through a legislative process, and we have about 900 things going at the same time. But one of them is legislation, whether it be hemp or whatever product you're going to do. It kind of comes from the top down. So the key to this is to have a really good working relationship and know who your delegation is on the top in the federal level. Establish a communication with their staffers. The staffers are the ones that are going to get the message to the elected official. The staffers are appointed different areas throughout Nevada, and connect with them and pick their brain on what's going on, what kind of legislation's coming down, what kind of things are happening, because ultimately that's going to reflect from a federal level down to the state level and ultimately down to the county level. So it's really important that you're aware and be cognizant of what's going on. Hemp legislation, for an example, it can't move very far in Nevada. As Guion told you, we're working on edibles for human and animal consumption. And until we get the top level of the federal government straightened out, it's going to be a long road to get the state regulations set. So it's a lot of work, but at least be cognizant of where you are and who represents you. And as Rich said, reach out to them, because they do have contacts and they're willing to share those. They do want you to succeed.
Yeah, maybe I'd follow up just with a little shout out to Nevada, because I think what we're going to see coronavirus kind of accelerated it. It was going to happen anyway. Remote is going to be the new on-site work. It just is how it's going to be. We want to live where we want to live, but we want to work for the companies we want to work for. And so as that happens more and more, folks coming into Nevada, which is generally really business friendly, I think you're going to see folks who are really happy coming to Nevada when comparing, its business friendly kind of aspects to that of their home state. So, they might also bring things with them though from their home state. Say, they come from another pro-business state like Texas or Ohio, you name it. Maybe even ones that maybe aren't traditionally really friendly to business, but have aspects to the way that their state government functions that could be helpful in Nevada. So I think you'll see an acceleration in change, and I think that'll be good. Change is good, it's difficult, but in the end, I think that progress will be really meaningful from all of the, I guess, kind of disparate folks coming into our state.
And just to kind of continue that train of thought, the idea that the pro-business of Nevada is great, but the ability for the state to build out that business ecosystem where more and more businesses come in, success is going to breed success. So as these additional businesses come in, we're going to accelerate that growth. So it's getting the pro-growth strategies at the government level was going to help the entrepreneurs just through the having that there, bringing more talent, more business, more people into Nevada, into the rural areas is going to accelerate, I think, what we're seeing today.
All right. Yeah. Obviously from my day job, especially, we're always pinpointing these little laws or policies that we think, my word, where did that come from? And one thing I've found out in the position is there's always somebody to listen, to say that you can make an argument and say, hey, this doesn't work, or that doesn't work. I mean, for example, there's a law in the books that says that a satellite pharmacy can't be within 50 miles of a standalone. And it makes sense, and I understand why they do that, but why 50 miles? Where did that come from, And what that's done is that one little law has eliminated the ability for one of our local businesses to expand to a community that's only 20 miles outside of one of our larger communities, and as such they can't do it. But especially in light of COVID, the need for a pharmacy in your local community, especially for the elderly who do not want to travel, especially to more populated areas, it becomes it's a real concern. And so what I found out is there's always people willing to listen when there is a stumbling block, for lack of a better term. I've often thought as well about incentivizing first-time businesses. For example, if you're a first-time business owner and you're going to be a sole proprietor, an LLC, let's cut that business license in half. So anything we can do to try to offset the cost to hopefully make you more successful. I've always kind of struggled with the fact that there's a state business license, and then every county might have a business license, and a city might have a business license. And if you have a mobile operation, and I found this in my own business, well, now I have to have a business license in Lander, Eureka, Elko counties, and that can be a challenge for some people, especially if you don't know whether or not you're going to be doing business in those. I think there's a way to fix that, and I think these are ways that we can make life a little bit easier on small businesses. And so I think if we get our heads together and we're willing to discuss these things, I think there's ways we can make our environment just second to none in giving small businesses a leg up. So I don't know, is there anybody who have anything else in regards to that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, having just recently in the past, year and a half formed a business, obviously at the state level and then at Humboldt County, or in Humboldt County, there's definitely, opportunities, I think, for the state to provide some of that sort of just application and online, filling of just forms and sending your forms in. A lot of that isn't automated and isn't even on websites right now. And I think the state's done some, Silver Flume is a pretty great website for a state website. And I think there, could be a lot where you help a county that maybe doesn't have the same IT resources as the state create their own portal or their app more easily. And I think that could be, top down.
So Sheldon, real quick. So when I have a business question, and I have many of them, there's two people I call. One is you and one is Donna. So for you potential entrepreneurs out there that are starting your business, getting the contact information for these folks, they're a wealth of information and very helpful.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, we do the best we can. I always tell folks, we always try to help. Sometimes we're good help and sometimes we ain't worth a darn, but either way we try. So yeah, you've been on both sides of that coin. No, thank you. Well, we'll move on. Let's talk a little bit about this event. So here's the first one. So far, so good. We haven't had any major hang-ups, knock on wood. The folks that organized this really did a good job putting it together. The question, though, to this group, do you think that more of these type of pitch competitions are needed in rural Nevada? Do you think that that events similar to what we're doing today will gain traction among business owners and entrepreneurs that you know? How do we foster an entrepreneurial environment to reach individuals who have an idea but have yet to act on it? This was one of our biggest concerns when we were talking about this is, if we build it, are they going to come or not? Do we have a culture that will foster this? Will this gain popularity? We expected it to start off small. Do you think it'll take off? And do you think it's important that we give small businesses and folks with ideas, dreamers, these opportunities? What's your initial thoughts?
I guess I'll go first, Sheldon. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. It's really great to see the larger corporations sponsoring this and reaching out and partnering. It's going to take a while. We are going to have to take baby steps to get the word out, but there are a lot of resources out there. And I think this type of forum that the entrepreneurs that want to come along in the state of Nevada, that gives them an exposure to people who are willing to help them and also the entities that are willing to help them. And this is a great resource, and I think it should continue, and really appreciate this forum.
And Sheldon, I'll jump in here. Having my first business came out of a pitch competition, I am very excited to see this going in rural Nevada. It provides two kind of critical things. One, it incentivizes the entrepreneur to actually start putting pencil to paper, and really, if they have an idea, it's a great way for them to get out there and just start getting, people listening to it, hearing it. And if they do a great job and the idea gains traction, there's just that little bit of cash and support from the community now pushing them to continue forward. And the second part is that now the community sees what's really out there and what ideas and how, man, that individual organization didn't win, but that sounds like a great idea. And I'm going to reach out individually to help them. So it really gets information out and incentivizes people. I don't see a downside to it. And I think every year it's just going to continue to grow and grow. And you're going to see this being an annual event. And I think a lot of good businesses are going to come out of just this one start.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think the ecosystem sort of builds itself around it kind of naturally, but enabling folks to think a little bit differently. I like when I was a kid, I'll just put it into perspective a little bit. I dreamed of work for a NASA or Lockheed Martin or Boeing. It was like I didn't really think of the concept of working for myself. Admittedly, till much later, it was like I want to go work for some cool company. But really, when you enable people to kind of think, and there's all the startup world in Silicon Valley, but there's also Shark Tank, which reaches a much broader audience. And I think we really are kind of maybe turning that tide of folks thinking a little bit differently about what they want to do with their time, and they want to do something that they're passionate about. Maybe you don't want to go work for a Fortune 500 company or Fortune 100 company, or maybe you do, and that's fine either way. But thinking for yourself a little bit and entrepreneurially about what you would be passionate about for the long run, I think will create, not only a lot more happy individuals that are working for themselves, but just relieve some of those stressors about being in the wrong position at the wrong company.
Great point.
Yeah, Sheldon, I don't know if it was Brian or Ian that mentioned just the ability to network and the networking potential and hearing other people's good ideas. I think it's great. And I think, like you guys said, when the word gets out, this will grow and build. It'll be a really cool event.
Good. So real quick, Brian, I'm going to ask you, you said your very first business was done, with this pitch. I mean, was that done here in Nevada, or how? Just give us maybe a quick synopsis of what that looked like and how it took off.
Sure. I'm going to give a shout out to UNR in this case. So I started not having an engineering and a government background, having absolutely no business acumen or background. I wanted to network, so I went to UNR for my MBA in person, and they offered essentially a pitch competition. Like, you put a full financials, submit a report, do the pitch, and they were going to give you money to go start that business. The program at UNR is pretty spectacular. The first place winner, they offered $50,000 to go start your business, which is huge. And so you're going to put a lot of effort into making that first impression really good if that much money is offered to you to start your business. And just from there, from that opportunity there, spending the next few months putting it together, something I never would have done if that opportunity hadn't existed, right? I would not have put pen to paper on irrigation and Internet of Things associated with that. But that opportunity just led to more and more and more. And out of various competitions via the UNR and the other places they direct me to, the company got $100,000 in startup capital just by going through these competitions and getting it going, which was absolutely critical. We talk about financing and the access to capital. Don't underestimate some of these other alternate ways of getting access to capital. And the university system and what they're doing at UNR, they can kind of set you on a good road if that's the method you're looking at.
It's great. It's great to hear those kind of stories, those success stories. Yeah, I wish we could have thrown together 50 grand at this one. We may have her next year. We'll see. So no, that's a great story. That's interesting.
Sheldon, I think one for, I don't know how many folks we have on here might be, in university or headed that way. But I believe it's Students in Free Enterprise, or SIFE. And I think they're a nationwide sort of student incubator and pitch competition. And so if you are heading to university, I don't know if UNR has that. I know they had it at Cal Poly, and a few of my friends kicked off their business in that organization.
Great. Yeah, that's good to know. Okay, we're going to move on. We're starting to run out of time, which doesn't surprise me. I figured this group could probably continue on for another hour. Just real quick, though, we'd like to know as a whole whether or not you folks think that this event was appropriately marketed. Were there people asking you about it in your local communities? Was the only way you heard about it what you heard from us when we reached out to you directly? Did we reach the appropriate audience? Is there another or a better way that maybe we could do this next year to make sure that we get maximum participation? What's your initial thoughts there?
I heard about it from you, Sheldon. And there probably were a couple of businesses that could have benefited from it here. There's some folks who want to open a bourbon tasting room and do a distillery, and that I think they would have benefited from this conversation. So it's tough to market in the rurals. I don't know if I have the answer on how to get to people. Maybe a little more advanced notice, and maybe the local papers and the social media sites, and that just kind of canvas it that way.
And I'm going to echo that, Sheldon. One of our other challenges in rural Nevada is that most of us do not, on this end of the state, however, Eureka, I think, is included as well. We don't even have access to Nevada news. So all of our news sources come out of Salt Lake City. So it's pretty, we have to make an effort to go find the news. And I think, we're just by word of mouth and social media, and those are the avenues that we use mostly in rural Nevada in this end of the world.
Right. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd just say social, and you should be able to set up a Nevada only where they're well, if that's what you actually want, but to kind of geo-fence it that way, if you will. But then you can send ads to folks via stories and different things in Facebook, Instagram, that kind of stuff works really well. I've seen folks do that at conferences really, really well, where they drop a geofence around a conference that's going on, and say you're at, for me, like a 3D printing conference, and you really want to have your name out there. Well, if you're pinging ads and you're paying a bunch of money, you can get a lot of throughput at your your event site if you do that.
And I will go from having not heard this until someone reached out to me for this. We didn't get a lot of marketing out this way. I think year one is tough, but as you start building a reputation behind it, it's going to be easier. However, getting that out ahead of time, especially where, I'm not a social media guy, but also getting it into the local government and some of the local marketing materials that comes out that way is going to be a great way to also engage out in this side of Nevada.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I know, we were having, I don't want to say we're having necessarily a hard time grabbing sponsors to kind of help out with some of the marketing costs and so forth. But I think what you said, Brian, is that we now have a successful event under our belt. And like I say, so far, things have been great. We've had great conversations, a lot of good information. I think our pitches are going to be done well, and now we have something that we can take. And I just want to thank, our existing sponsors that jumped on board, before this was a thing. Especially NV Energy, they put up the cash for some of the prizes, and GoEd, the Startup NV, the Nevada Small Business Development Center, Entrepreneurs Assembly, the Osmonds. I mean, there's a stack of them there, and we really want to thank them because they jumped in before this was a thing, and we really appreciate their support. And I think that once we get this first one under our belt, people are going to talk about it. And out in the rurals, word of mouth it's worth gold. It'll, you're either going to soar or you're going to sink. It just depends, which way you go. But I think we've got something good here. So I don't know if what I'll do is maybe if there's anybody in the crowd that might want to ask one of our panelists a question. We have about 8-9 minutes left. And if you have a question for one of our folks here, maybe we'll open that up for the next couple of minutes. So feel free either to put it in the chat box or just jump in. All right. Well, we must have covered it all. So I'm going to leave you with one more question, maybe just kind of wrap it up. There was a lot of mention about the UNR's resources that they have available, the universities over on the California side. We have Mr. George Klebe here with us with the small community college right here in Elko. We have a couple other community colleges around the state, including TMCC. As far as the panelists go, what do you think the smaller schools can do? GBC, TMCC, Western Nevada, those colleges, Southern Nevada College there. What are things that the smaller groups can do maybe to foster this small business entrepreneurship environment in the rurals?
I mean, I would just say, never fear taking a class. Gaining knowledge in any way. Just go take a class. You don't have to commit to anything. But GBCC, locally here has business administration and computer technology type classes. I just say to GBCC to keep up with the latest and greatest in the biz tech world. 10 years ago, ADP kind of ran all of our back office software. Now we have Workday, QBO, Zenefits, Gusto, Airtable, Copper, Salesforce, you name it. You have all of these different tools to do everything, and they do it really well, but you have to know about it. You have to know how to use these different technologies, and then you have to be trained in them. So, don't be afraid to go learn a new thing. At the, community college side, don't be stagnant. Keep updating your technology and keep offering new classes wrapped around that.
Sheldon, I'd like to add also that I have to say that our partnership with Great Basin College here in Ely and Eureka, because they also attend our college, has been great. We have a lot of workforce development courses going, and although they're geared to diesel and electrical that will assist the mining companies, we have many people that will go out and start their own electrical business or open up a car repair shop or many other things. We have a nursing program that's coming online this year. And so thank you very much to Great Basin College for helping us with that, because our workforce development leads us to more business and more entrepreneurs. And that's very important for the vitality of rural Nevada.
I would add on one thing to that. The taking courses, sometimes having a quarter or semester long course is just not feasible for a lot of people that are working out there. And so having these 3 or 4 day, long day courses where it just talks about the back end of a business, how accounting works in the business, what licensing is required, how to accurately price your products. A lot of the stuff that we can be very subject matter expert on, maybe the engineering side, isn't going to help us with actually running a business. So having those short, really intense courses just give you that basic information on what it actually takes to run a business. That little bit can be just critical from moving from a subject matter expert to now having awareness of all the other items that kind of go along with running a business, because it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be when I started.
Yeah, and I think that's important. It's important to know what the cost. I mean, not just money, but time, effort. Too many times people have this grand idea, but they forget that from the starting point to the end, there's so much in between. And it's better to know what that is and decide whether or not you want to, to trek out on that journey, rather than just too many times people end up wasting their time because it's more than they bargained for, right? So it's not for everybody, but for some folks it certainly is. So no, I think that's a great point, and that's certainly something that our local colleges can help to to teach and to make aware to folks that are interested. So we have about 4 minutes left, it looks like, and I'll just say end the time by telling all the panelists we certainly appreciate your time with us today. We appreciate what you do out in rural Nevada. We appreciate what you do in your industries. We look forward to bigger, better things as we go. We appreciate your willingness to help your fellow man here, help your neighbor. And so that's important. That is what makes us so unique. And so to Mr. Muceus, Mr. Blair, Commissioner McKay, and Mrs. Bath, I just want to say thank you very much. And we will turn the mic over to Mr. Klebe.
And thank you to all the panelists. And Ian and Brian, may I quote you? Our program in the business department is going through a review. And this is one of the things you mentioned were literally the things that I am wanting to look at, because I'm afraid we sometimes do have a tendency in academia to get stagnant.